How do we change people's behavior? How do we build a mindset of transformation, a mindset of continuous improvement in people? I would always encourage leaders to be data driven, to be open. How do they see things happening in the marketplace, for example, instead of actually looking at the data and then challenging their own assumptions and having a conversation and dialogue around how do we use this insights from data to drive our business decisions.
Welcome to the Learn It All podcast, the show for today's leaders who want to get ahead and stay ahead, because we believe great leaders aren't born or made, they're always in the making. I'm your host, Damon Lemby, two-time best-selling author and CEO of Learn It, a live learning platform that has helped upskill over 2 million people. Today, joining me is my good friend and return guest, Tariq Munir. He is a digital transformation expert with over 20 years of experience helping to guide Fortune 500 companies like PwC and PepsiCo, and he helps them with leveraging AI to boost profits, cut costs, and save time, all without losing human touch. Today, we're going to do a deep dive into his great new book, Reimagine Finance, the CFO's leadership playbook for the age of AI, data, and digital. I was honored that Tariq asked me to endorse his book for him. I read it and I loved it. And if you're serious about leading your company into an AI-ready future, this episode is absolutely for you. So Tariq, you've worked on the cutting edge of both finance and technology, but in your brand new book, you're basically arguing that transformation isn't actually about technology, but it's about something else. So what is it?
In one simple word, Damon, transformation is all about mindset. It is all about, and in a broader terms, when it comes to individuals, it's all about mindset. And in the broader terms, it's all about the culture of the organization. So digital transformation, yes, we tend to put an enormous amount of focus, unfortunately, on the digital side, but we do not put a lot of focus. And I do see organizations not putting a lot of focus on the transformation piece, which is all about change management, which is all about building the right mindset to embrace technology, to unlock value for the organization. So this is what digital transformation is all about. And that's the entire argument that I'm carrying in the book as well. Of course, I do talk about a bit about technology. It is important. Of course, it's an important piece of the equation, but it's not the only piece of the equation. The bigger piece is that how do we change people's behavior? How do we build a mindset of transformation, a mindset of continuous improvement in people, a culture where people see change or transformation as business as usual, as opposed to something just coming up as a one-off project.
And so we're going to get in your book, which is called Reimagine Finance, in a moment. But there's all kinds of transformations. But what we're really talking about, and you hear all day, all long, is AI transformation. So my next question to you about this, though, is what's your definition of an AI-ready company?
Again, the being an AI-ready does not mean that we need to have access to, first of all, what does it not mean, right? Mm-hmm. It does not mean being ready to have access to a lot of funding, a lot of resources, cutting edge tools, anything to do with having an access to the data scientists or AI engineers. It is nothing to do with that. Being, again, AI ready is all about, first of all, there are, of course, again, two elements to it. One is having a digital foundation in place, of course. But that digital foundation does not mean, again, as I said, that, having access to the cutting edge tool. It's about making sure that that data that you have in the organization is being processed properly. It is cleaned, and it is available to be consumed by artificial intelligence to extract real value from it. And then, of course, you should be having access to some of the tools, or again, some of the not really cutting edge tools, but there is a lot available out there that you can access today. Now, apart from having data and having a bit of a technology or a bit of a digital foundation in place, again, the most important piece is building an organizational literacy and an organizational acceptance of artificial intelligence. we see AI as this external kind of an intelligence and as an inorganic intelligence which is going to come over and replace humans. This is the narrative we have been all running with. But that narrative needs to change. And this is what, to be for an organization to be an AI ready, has to think differently, right? First of all, they need to make sure that they are building enough AI literacy and enough digital mindset in the organization to be able to extract value from artificial intelligence. Otherwise, it will again just be a tool coming in. You can have a best-in-class funding or best-in-class access to best-in-class resources and all the funding in the world, but it is not going to work if your people are not able to adapt and also adopt the technology. So people need to be changed as well, and also they need to be able to use the technology to solve some of the most specific business problem. You are AI ready if you have enough business problems that you truly believe AI can help you solve. There is no such thing as being ready for technology just to get the technology in so that you can somehow use it. There has to be a purpose. There has to be a use behind it. So I always go with this notion of not being AI first or AI strategy. There is no such thing as that. You need to be solution rather than being solution focused. That yes, AI is a solution, but be problem focused. So if you have enough problems, if you have enough organizational pull to be able to use AI to solve the specific business problems, you are ready for AI.
What I hear you saying is, don't necessarily be solution focused, but be really problem or outcome focused with what you're looking at and doing throughout the organization. And also, all the funding in the world isn't going to help you if you don't have the right mindset to implement it. And also, I kind of believe that AI is democratizing things for organizations who maybe who can be scrappy and don't have those entire big budgets. So today, I mean, AI transformation is across the board, whether it's in operations, whether it's in sales. Our lens of our conversation is going to be around your book, Reimagine Finance, and the role finance plays in this. So before we kick off into your book, tell us a little bit about your background and why you're so passionate about digital transformation, especially around finance.
So, Damon, a great question. I started off as an accountant, as a typical finance guy, right? So I started off from audit, PwC, moved to AkzoNobel, worked there as a head of finance. Then 12 years ago, I moved to PepsiCo, and that's where also I did a lot of different finance roles, pretty much from reporting to control. So pure finance guy I used to be like. But over past few years, I would say 5 to 7 years, I have been one thing that over past 5 to 7 years, I have been working in different roles like supply chain finance and then integrated planning. And then my last role at PepsiCo was also leading the digital transformation. But that I would say is more of a product or an outcome of what I have been doing in the past. What I felt throughout and I observed throughout my career was that finance people are smart people, right? They are great. They are great with numbers. They can solve problems. They are really good when it comes to solving some of the most complex challenges. But what I have felt is that throughout our day, we just get so much bogged down with systems not talking to each other, data not being available in one place. The Excel files are not, of course, they are disparate. Everyone have their own versions. I mean, in other words, we could do things in a better way, right? And that's what I have been doing throughout my career, right? I have been trying to transform it. Whatever role I did, I pretty much tried to transform the ways of working. Not that even if I have a mandate or even if I don't have a mandate, I do believe that you always have a mandate to transform in any organization if the culture is right. So you can transform your roles, you can transform your ways of working, and that's what I have been doing. And that acted as kind of an impetus for me to really take it to the next level and fully dedicate myself to not just transformation in finance now, but of course in the broader business also. But finance, I do believe that I had some kind of a responsibility to give back to the community, to make sure that we have so much unique advantage in the organization. We sit at the helm of everything, right? I mean, we know the pulse of the organization. Every single process cuts through finance. So there is no other function in the organization who has that level of access and that level of visibility into data processes and business outcomes. So I do believe that there is a lot that finance can do. And based on my experience and the work that I have done, and then of course a lot of research that I did for the book also, I thought it's time for me to give it back to the finance leaders and help them elevate themselves from typical, back office kind of, sometimes the impression that gets for a lot of finance people, that they are back office, back office people, they are number crunchers, to becoming a real strategic driver and catalyst and navigators of the business growth. And that is the entire premise behind it.
Give me a win from your career. We talked about, you took it upon yourself, or you've always thought that it's important to have transformation or make transformation. Can you share a win back from your corporate days of a big transformation you helped spearhead?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So there were like quite a few. So for example, there was this company I was working with, and we had to set up the entire. So what happened was that there was a spin-off that happened. So the new organization that was set up needed an entirely new and entirely different structure for their finance organization. So I helped spearhead that, and I pretty much set up their processes from their back office, shared services center, to then putting up all the financial planning, strategic planning, commercial finance, operations planning. So setting up all the processes, and then end to end looking at how do we actually wire our existing tech infrastructure within the current organizational structure, so that people are best placed to perform and deliver the output at the best level. That was one of the, I would say, a big projects that I led, from setting up a big organization's finance function, including their technology stack and everything from the scratch. So that was one of the amazing ones that really helped me set up my career in this direction.
Tell us a little bit about what your experience was like and what you learned writing the book.
Damon, as I always say, that writing a book is a demanding but equally rewarding experience. It has exposed me to the ideas I never thought of, connected me to the amazing thought leaders, and challenged some of my very own assumptions I was carrying. I things like, how do you actually approach transformation? How do you look at what are the key success factors of a transformation? It is not just about technology. It's not just about digital. It's not even just about having the right people. It is about orchestrating the end-to-end transformation with the right culture and the right mindset in place. So most importantly, it was a humbling experience for me. I realized that there is so much that I don't know and that I could learn from others, while simultaneously, I do believe that there was a lot that I could also help other finance leaders and other leaders to learn. So overall, it's a great experience, and I would definitely do that again.
Give us one nugget. What's one big surprise that came out of that?
So I guess the one big piece was around how in a typical corporate culture, we are always very much focused on bias towards action. You just want to get things done, right? Somehow urgency is, everything is urgent and everything is important. When I looked at some of the successful transformations which had a wider and much more bigger impact, yes, I'm not talking about no small one-off projects that we do and, we are used to like just get a tool and just somehow get this project done and get a promotion and move on. Those transformation which has really worked well and really has created built a right to succeed for the finance and and the rest of the organization in this digital era, they started off with a clear why. And that's where that, that famous work by Simon Sinek comes into play as well. And that's so true in this scenario as well, in the scenario of digital transformation as well. You must start with, why do you need to transform? You need to step back. You need to ask the right questions. And that is one of the premise that I would say has now shaped up my thinking around the digital transformation and how it can help organizations lead in this new era.
And how is your book going to help others do the same?
Oh, they just need to read that playbook portion. So there is this whole playbook that I give them, that which has those 5 different steps in it, that they can pretty much, not steps, I would say these are more principles that I call them, because they can be done in parallel. So having a clear vision, having a roadmap, then engaging your team, building a governance framework, governance structure, and then most importantly, creating a right to succeed for your organization. So if you look at it, that this last element sits at the bottom as a foundation for everything else on top of it. So I'm sure that playbook is going to help a lot of finance and even business leaders as well in leading their transformations.
Let me ask you this. When you were doing your keynote speeches, and you said that a bunch of questions came up that maybe you'd hear on a regular basis that helped at least form or shape some of your ideas for the book. Can you share one or two of what those questions were?
Yeah, absolutely. So for example, one common question that I used to get that is how do we start? Right? Very, very, very common. Everyone is gonna be like, because everyone thinks that AI or digital transformation, that is something reserved for big corporations. And when I would be talking to on a stage, sometimes people would put a bit of a stereotyping that, oh, you are from a bigger organization, so for you it's easier said than that. It's easy to say this, but we are from a mid-sized organization, for example, right? So we don't have those level of funding. So where do we start? So that is one of the key questions, and that's what I try to cover in my book as well, that you do not need to start with all the funding in the world, right? I give examples of organizations and case studies of organizations which are actually pretty small in size, and they have done good transformation. They have done good change of how they were doing their ways of working. Then secondly, it's about another very common question is that, when does it finish? When does it end? Right? How long a digital transformation should last? And I always say that it's a never-ending journey. If your digital transformation, if you say that my digital transformation is finished, I'm done with it, there is something wrong. Right? There is something wrong with your strategy. There is something wrong going on. You need to revisit this statement, because digital transformation cannot end. There is no ending line. Yes, you will of course have some milestones that you will keep on tracking yourself. It's not that you start a project and it's never ends. It's not about starting or ending a project. It's about a journey of continuous improvement, continuously. So again, as I say, that digital transformation requires an organization to continuously re-architect their operating model. It is not something that you can do once and just do it and then you just set and forget kind of a scenario. It cannot happen that way. By the time you will be done with one change, technology, and then the resulting macroeconomics and geopolitical and other uncertainties, other volatilities would require you to change yourself again. And again, one thing very important here is that it is not about technology changing. A lot of people think about digital transformation cannot end because technology keeps on changing. No, that is not the reason. I tend to disagree to an extent to that, because it is not about how technology is changing. It is about how your business environment is changing, how your competitive environment in which you are operating is evolving. The geopolitical, no one, for example, no one actually predicted COVID, right? No one predicted that even after COVID is over, there will be such a surge in supply chain disruptions, right? I have seen that firsthand. No one predicted that. That all requires us to be agile and build a digital DNA in order for us to respond to these changes effectively and in in an agile manner. But it is all about the business environment changing as opposed to just the technology changing. Today, I still believe that on a side note, I still believe that there is a lot of technology which we call traditional AI, like your typical machine learning, which has been there for last 20 years or 10 years in the business with delivering value, that can still deliver a lot of value to the organization today before even going into the fancier Gen AI or agentic AI stuff.
So you're saying you can't use the excuse of technology is always changing, and that's why we're not able to do it, because it's more about like the mindset that we're going to get into and talk about. And I totally agree with that. So you also mentioned a couple of minutes ago that in some of the research you did and talking to these great minds, a lot of your assumptions were challenged. And so that my question is, in the first or second draft of your book, did anything come out where you were challenged and you said, look, this has actually changed, or I was just completely wrong, and you have a whole new thought process on it?
I have been, I would say that one of the things that I was guilty of doing was I was an over kind of I would try to do a lot of action first and then thinking later, right? So and similar, I was thinking more about the technology as well, and when it comes to digital transformation, that let's, of course, in the essence of trying or experimentation as well, and a bias for action, all those are great things. Yes, let's do that, and then think about how does it fit into the bigger picture, and how does it solve some of the pressing business problems. What I realized, based on a number of different research and how actually the organizations achieved a successful digital transformation, is just stepping back first and understanding the why. That why do we need to even do this certain transformation? Why do we even think about why do we even think about AI, for example? I mean, what does it mean, right? I mean, do we actually need to bring AI? So challenge that basic assumption instead of just going right in and then just trying to get things done. Again, I mean, being in a corporate culture, that is something which is rewarded, that you just get things done, and then you think about it later that whether a certain tool or a certain technology would fit into the overall picture. Yes, you are solving a problem. You are still solving, for example, a supply chain issue. You are still solving, for example, a financial planning issue, but that solution, the way you are thinking, might not fit into the bigger business strategy, right? So what it really helped me unlock a bit was around how do we actually step back and ask those why questions. And that was a bit of I would say a challenging of the ways I was working, and the challenging of the ways I was thinking, and then actually seeing that yes, that actually helps, stepping back and then thinking about, okay, doing a bit of a deep thinking around why do we even need to do transformation, right? Is there any need? So that is something I would say one of my assumptions that were challenged.
What you're saying in your book is that the finance leader, the CFO, is actually in a great position to take the lead or to spearhead this transformation, where others might argue maybe it should be the CTO or the COO. So why should the finance person be the one that's heading it up, or at least spearheading it, let's say it that way? And what is the mindset shift and these specific traits that we're going to need to be successful in these kinds of digital transformations?
So, Damon, as I referred to earlier as well, that finance, first of all, it has a very unique vantage point, right? Now, CFO has this unique position on the C-suite, which no other C-suite executive has. They are pretty much the right hand for any CEO, right? Now, that does not mean that they get the opportunity or they get the right to lead the transformation. The reason I say they get the right to lead the transformation is that the agenda a CFO is running, no one else on the C-suite. Some can argue that yes, chief operating officer to some extent might be, but then the way a chief financial officer is doing it, no one else has that packed agenda. They are not just looking at finance or accounting. Yes, that's the core. They are looking at the ESG, environment, social, and governance. They are looking at investor relations, of course. They are looking at pricing strategies now. They are looking at strategic planning, and you name it. Pretty much anywhere in the organization, any new stuff happening, capital planning or operational planning, CFO is involved in that. There is a big reason for their involvement as well, being their financial acumen, of course, and financial stewardship being one, their governance and risk appetite, and their predisposition to risk management as well. So this puts CFO in a very unique position, that they know the risks of reporting a wrong number, for example. They know the risk of making a wrong decision, how it is going to impact the bottom line. Not every C-suite executive might have that level of understanding or that level of depth. This gives CFO a very unique vantage point, or this gives CFO a very unique position, an advantageous position actually, to lead the digital transformation. And in many cases, I have seen even some CFOs have IT reporting into them as well, or even HR reporting into them as well. So depending upon the organization size, of course, right? For bigger organization, that's not the case, global organization, but medium-sized organization, that I have seen quite often this practice. So that gives CFO a very this gives them an advantage to actually over other C-suite executives to then lead the transformation and then really take it to the next level. For example, if we are doing a demand planning upgrade, for example, demand forecasting transformation. For any demand forecasting, you would need to collaborate with your sales team, with your supply team, and most importantly, finance team has to be present there, right? Finance team is the core of that because at the end of the day, if your forecast is wrong, if your yes, it has impact on your supply planning, but then there needs to be that one person who can look at the end-to-end impact of that, and finance is best placed to do that. So hence, I do believe that finance is, and that's the argument of the book, is that CFOs need to step up and lead, or at least co-lead and co-create the overall organizational digital transformation strategy, and not just finances. And of course, for that, you need to be to your second point around the skills that are needed. Of course, I mean that requires an entirely different skill set apart from just being the finance person. One core skill that I always voice out, that I always talk about, is that in future, leaders are not just managers, or not just the functional leaders, or even business leaders. Everyone is a change manager. So one thing we need to build is become a change agent, a change manager. And again, go back to the change management 101, what's in it for them, paint a bigger picture, and how do you take people along with you, how do you mobilize the organization. So that's a skill that is the paramount in ensuring that we are able to drive digital transformation in the organization. Of course, there are a lot more, but this is, I would say, is the paramount one.
And then as well, you got to be a change agent. I understand that, but also the role, I believe, of like critical thinking is huge as well.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Again, as I mentioned, there are so many other skills that we need to develop. So critical thinking, I always talk about critical thinking, and I do talk about that in my book as well. Emotional intelligence being there. And then today you need to be flexible and agile as well. We need to embrace agile. We should be able to embrace failure. We should be able to move and develop ourselves from our conventional one. You start off with one role, and that's where you end up at the end of the career as well. That's not the new, that's not doable anymore. You need to keep on moving, keep on moving between different roles, keep on going from one function to another function, get critical experiences over your entire career, and then become much more a master of a lot of different things, right? We say a jack of all trade, but a master of all trade. This is what is required to become in the future.
One of the areas you talked about in your book that I find fascinating, and you see quite a bit these days, I believe it's called automation bias. Can you speak a little bit to that and how not just finance leaders, but leaders in general can make sure that they don't fall trapped to that?
Yeah, so very good question, Damon. So the thing is that this comes down to effectively critical thinking we were just talking about, right? So automation bias effectively is that predisposition that if something is created by an output is created by technology, it must be true. It must be right. It must be okay. That is something which is a counter narrative of, which is anything but critical thinking. So we need to be very careful in evaluating, and we need to that's where critical thinking becomes paramount, because we need to really, really evaluate what the output of a machine is. We should be able to question that. We should be able to analyze that. We should be able to then take it further and then debate on that. And that requires, of course, critical thinking. That requires us to step back, understand, solve the problem, try to break it down, listen to other people's opinion, and also very importantly, ensure that we take enough time to solve a problem. Now, we sometimes carry, and a lot of us do carry, urgency as a badge of honor, because we just want to get to the answer, get to the solution right away. If we are sitting in a meeting, we want to give a solution right away. We just want to, as I mentioned earlier as well, right, that become a bias for action, right? That yes, let's do that. So let's just find the solution. Let's make fast, agile decision making. In the name of that, what we do, we somehow undermine the critical thinking piece. So sometimes we just need to be aware of this urgency trap also. Because what happens is that a machine will give you an output, an AI will give you an output. For example, generative AI gives you an output. Things are so urgent and we want to just respond so quickly. We want to just act on it so quickly that we do not take time to actually validate the information, go back and understand whether it makes sense or not. At the end of the day, AI as of today is still a probabilistic models, right? They are still based on a huge amounts of data, and then whatever is the best output, whatever is the best outcome going to look like statistically, it is going to give you that. So it can be wrong. So making sure that we are stepping back and evaluating the information and not falling trap of this urgency trap, that's again another important way we can avoid this automation bias, which is very prevalent these days.
And we also need to be, when it comes to decision making, everything, you talk about being data driven, not giving up on your gut, but being disciplined and being data driven.
Oh, absolutely. Data, again, I never say that do not stop relying on your gut at all, or, it's just to have to be just data. Of course, our gut, our feelings, and how we perceive things, our contextualization, that's what makes us humans. However, being data-driven does require us to be able to challenge our own assumptions, to challenge our gut feel, to challenge our instincts that, yes, data is telling me an entirely different story. This is not something that I believe in, but data might be telling me the right thing. So yes, let's understand the data further. Let's critically evaluate it again. Let's look at my own assumptions, that how does that fit into the broader picture. And then we take a decision based on that, and not just the gut feel, or not just based on the output of the machine. So again, it's a complex decision making, or decision science is becoming more and more complex as and when more technology is influencing that. AI is generating output today at a click of a button, which seems very reasonable, which seems very which has a lot of verbosity in it, which is detailed, and it seems like it cannot be this. It just seems too good to be false, mm-hmm. Right? So you have to people tend to so the inclination is relying on it as opposed to not relying on it. So that's an important piece. That's an important piece that yes, we need to be data driven, and again, there is always this balance that we need to create. But yes, I mean, I would always encourage leaders to be data driven, to be open, because again, in a lot of scenarios, it happens that we go in a meeting and people who are like the more senior and more have more influence in the organization, they tend to hijack the meeting, and they are just then going with their assumptions of how do they see things happening in the marketplace, for example, instead of actually looking at the data and then challenging their own assumptions and having a conversation and dialogue around how do we use this insights from data to drive our business decisions.
I don't want to move past that too quickly because I think that is a common trap that a lot of leaders fall into, is that when they're in a room with a group of people or on a Zoom or whatever, they fall into the trap of only listening to either themselves or the highest paid people in the room.
Yeah.
Right. And they miss out on a lot of good feedback and ideas and innovation from others, especially people at the front lines. What is one piece of practical advice that you can give to a leader to make sure that they could catch themselves or prevent themselves from falling into that trap of just only listening to the highest paid person in the room?
Be the last one to speak. Just don't speak. For the more senior you become, the lesser you speak. That's a very simple rule that I think we all need to embrace, we all need to follow. Because when you let other people speak, when you listen to other attentively and genuinely listen to other, not that, you are not speaking and you are on your phone, that also doesn't make any difference, of course. But of course, just make sure that you are listening to them, you are responding to them, you are understanding what people are coming from. And of course, I mean, acknowledging that my truth is not the only truth out there. There is a lot more that I don't know. So I'm happy to go back and find answers for those. So that is the biggest tip or something that of a hack that I can give. That just stay quiet, because again, there is a psychology behind as well, right? The person who is a highest paid officer in the room, once they talk about something, suddenly everyone is inclined to agree, because there will not again, I mean, no matter how open we claim an environment is, people still want to be liked. People still want to be in the good books of their bosses, in the good books of their managers. So they might not, they might not contradict that right away. They might be doing it afterwards, but not right away. So the conversation or the entire subject of the meeting goes in an entirely different direction, and that direction might not be the right one.
Right, because nobody's going to. I mean, you get the CEO jumps in first with their idea. A lot of people are going to sit back and say, "Well, I'm not going to challenge this. I mean, I'm just going to sit here." I mean, why would I even stick my neck out there and deal with it, right? But if you're the CEO and you sit back and whoever, and you get all these ideas, that's what help generate future ideas, and it just brings out a lot more opportunity, I believe. And I think you touched on a good point. So we talked about some of the important skills and traits that people have. Another part in Tariq's book that I thought was interesting, that I'm curious to see how he explains it, because I don't want to mess this up. But let's talk about going from an I profile to an E profile.
Oh, yes. M profile.
Oh, okay. Well, I was close.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So again, this is the work done by Professor Nick Van Dam, and it's an amazing work done. And this is again one of the skills or one of the traits that future leaders need, and that's not just true for finance, of course. That's true for everyone of today. So typically, what again, and this was again a bit of a revelation for me as well. Typically, I would talk about, in any organization or most of the career conversations, we would talk about an I profile or a T profile. So I profile is that you would just do one job. You start off as a salesperson, and then you get promoted there. But within that sales, within that same function, within that same area, you become you spend all your life there. So you're pretty much not building any new skills. You're becoming very functional, very technical. T profile is where we talk about, yes, you are very technical in sales, you are very technical in finance, with that still that pillar of T, the I in there. But then the horizontal part of the T is where you will build your leadership skills, your interpersonals, your communications, your influencing skills, your negotiation skills. So that makes you to become a leader in the organization. From your functional expertise to the true leader, you need to build that T profile, right? Which makes sense, of course, right? What Professor Nick Van Dam argues is that the 21st century requires us to move from T profile to M profile. Now look at this M as three pillars and then like a horizontal bar on the top. What that means is that throughout our careers, we need to continue to be mobile and flexible to move into entirely new areas. So for example, CFOs of today might have to do a gig as a digital transformation lead in the organization, for example. They might need to do something in the operations or the supply chain or in sales or marketing, in order for them to build expertise in different areas throughout their career. Because reason being, in this new era, in this new the organizations where the very DNA is becoming digital, the traditional functional boundaries are blurring more and more, and the decision making is becoming more and more dispersed. So one decision has a multitude or requires a knowledge of multitude different things. Pricing is not just one person's responsibility, or that's not something that CFO, for example, can only do. They need to understand that, okay, what are the impacts on the market? What is the share price? How does that impact my sales? How does that eventually then impact my supply planning, and so on and so forth. So in 21st century, this is how people need to build their careers. They need to start and what I call it a critical experience. Start moving into the areas which you have not done in the past and build those critical experiences. So for example, I started off in finance. I moved into integrated business planning. Nothing to do with finance. Yes, finance played a very critical role. As a finance, I was leading it, but it played a very critical role. But it exposed me to so much, to the entire organizational value chain, that how from portfolio planning till actually those numbers translating into your P&L works throughout the organization, and what are the different modalities and different moving pieces around that. So this is what in the future we need to do, and that is, I have seen that happening now. I see a lot of people moving into different, even it's also the other way around. So for example, I argue in the book as well, I argue that a lot of now, and I think if I don't remember exactly the statistics, but it's somewhere around 30 or 40% of CFOs come from non-finance background now. They come from strategy, and I have seen that.
That's a big number. That's a big number.
And I have seen that happening. Like I have seen that happening with my own eyes. People coming from strategy, people coming from the transformation piece, people even coming from the chief operating officer role into the CFO role. So CFOs, or any leaders for that matter, for the future, will not just be. So if you are an expert in your field, if you have a deep expertise in one area, it does not give you a right, a natural right to be the leader of that function, for example. So you need to build different skill set, and then the horizontal bars around on that M stays the same. That is still your negotiation skills, still your interpersonal business partnering, and all those different skills. So this is how the profile is changing. It's interesting. It's debatable, I know, but it is nonetheless and raises quite a few questions.
What would be the biggest argument against that from somebody going across the platform, so to speak? Would they say that no, as a CFO, you need to have a much stronger finance background? You're putting your company at risk if you don't. Is that something you would most likely hear?
That, plus a lot of people do say that, okay, yeah, I don't want my career to be, I'm a finance guy, for example, or I'm a sales guy, for example, or a sales girl. I don't want to do marketing. I'm not going to do so. If, for example, if you're in sales, I'm not going to do finance. I know this is not my career. So why do I even bother? Why do I do that? Why do I spend 1.5 year there? That might mean that I lose my position in the sales organization, because again, you move out of a certain function, you go into a different function, you work there, you come back, maybe you might not come back at a similar level, or come at a similar level, sorry, but if you would have stayed in that function, you might have gotten promoted more, right? I mean, that's natural, sometimes happen as well. So that's one of the things. But again, career, again, I'm not a career expert at all, right? But career, based on my experience, career is never a straight line, right? It's not that you are going to just keep growing and growing in one there. There will always be areas where you will have to step back, or you have to move in a same level, or that the same within the similar position, or even lower down, just to understand more things, to expand your portfolio of knowledge and expand your understanding. And as we witness now, people who can solve and connect dots between the different moving pieces of the organization are much more valuable at the C-suite and at the executive level. You are not expected to know the international reporting standards when you have become a CFO by heart. Yes, you should have a high level understanding that yes, something is not wrong, but you will have people for that. What will become important is that how you are able to solve a problem, that how this change is impacting my sales, is impacting my marketing. Even if, for example, if it's a pure financial accounting standard change, how is that going to impact sales, not just from an accounting point of view, but how is that going to impact my market share? How is that going to impact my the demographics of my consumers, for example? What impacts it's going to have over the business? What are the supply chain issues? What are the planning issues? People with those skill set are much more valued at the end of the day. And I have seen that personally in my own experience as well, right? That I got to the position of leading a digital transformation for APAC because I was trying to get as many experiences as possible, right?
Yeah, I think the argument of, well, I don't want to be a marketing person or a salesperson or whatever, I don't want to say it's laziness, but it's staying in your comfort zone and maybe not pushing yourself outside of it a little bit, Tariq. And what you're saying is so important in any type of position. If you want to get up to a C-level, I think, is because it helps you from a high level understand and sometimes even be more empathetic to the people in those other roles, because you could kind of get an idea of what they're talking about, what they're going through, and even speak their language a little bit more.
True.
If somebody picked up your book and they only had time to read one case study or one piece of research, what is one piece of the book do you think that people are going to be the most attracted to as far as one of the top 3 aha moments from the book?
I think they should read that playbook part. That's very important. That is where a lot of assumptions, and as I mentioned as well, that is where a lot of my own assumptions were challenged as well. And I do believe that will help them challenge their own assumptions, get them to think a lot. How would they actually lead digital transformation? The first part of the book is about technology a bit. Of course, we need to think about what are the different technologies, what are the different applications that are there, which are reshaping how we do work. But how do we actually lead transformation? That is the playbook part. So I would say that if you don't have time, please just read those couple of chapters. They are really important. Why it is important to have a vision, that why, that big picture, right? I mean, yes, we want to jump onto action. We want to do things right away, because again, a lot of times it happens that people stay in a role for not more than 2 to 3 years. They want to get something done and then just move on. But that the things that they do, the projects that they do might not fit into a bigger picture. So that is very important. So reading about why. And then I guess the second chapter within that playbook is around building a roadmap, actually actioning that. So that is again very important, that how do you prioritize? How do you start? How do you, that coming back to that original question of where do we start? So you start small and then you start building, or there you identify quick wins, momentum builders. That's very important. And then, as I always say, that engaging the team. That's the core of it. That's the third principle of the playbook. And then, of course, governance, and then creating a right to succeed, which is the most important one. The culture piece covered in that chapter.
So, say I read the book cover to cover, and I step back into my regular job, or I'm looking to get a promotion or move in a different direction. What are a couple of things that I'm going to be much more confident about putting myself in a position to be successful from your book?
First of all, you will build, and I do hope that you will build a digital mindset. You should be able to identify the output of technology that is going to help you solve some of the most complex business problems. That is the entire premise of this book, that how do you build that digital mindset? How are you able to solve business problems? If you will be much more confident if you are sitting in a room with your CTOs, with your other C-suite, who are trying to find solutions to their specific business problems, or they are someone talking about business problem and CTO talking about technology problem, but then no one in the middle actually being able to translate and connect the two. You become that connection, you become that glue between the organization. So I know it's a big claim, but I do hope it will move you into that direction. This book will help you do that.
Wave a magic wand 3 years in the future. What do you think that CFO role will look like?
So as I mentioned, that CFOs already are managing quite a packed agenda. I do believe their role is going to evolve, and they are going to become more of a co-pilot and more of those. And we have seen that happening in quite a few organizations as well. I think Salesforce did something where they appointed a COFO, Chief Operating and Financial Officer. I do believe that in the next 2 to 3 years, that is going to become a norm. Your Chief Financial Officer and your Chief Operating Officer roles are most probably going to get either amalgamated, or they will become much more. Either one role or CFO's role will expand a little bit more to include all these digital and transformation and all these kind of additional stuff. They are already looking at ESG. They are already looking at investor relations. They are already looking a lot of different strategic planning. All they need to now probably get more into is towards the operational planning and towards these more business operations, and that is happening. That is in next 2 to 3 years. I do see that happening.
I love how you look at the finance role as future thinking, taking charge of the digital transformation. And it's so important because, like you said, there's a lot of CFOs who are moving into a CEO role, more now probably in the last 10 years than ever. So as we wrap up here, what is one more thing, either an action you want somebody to take or something from a book you want to leave the listeners with?
My suggestion or my advice to anyone listening would be that, yes, as we talked about so far, technology is revolutionizing. Technology is going to do it, but that is going to stay there, right? Technology will keep on changing, and it will keep on evolving the way it will require you to keep evolving the way you do your business. What as a finance leader or as a CFO that you can do is make sure that you are open to growth. So you build that digital mindset, as I mentioned. Digital mindset is what build your digital literacy and have a growth mindset. Very simply, there is no skill in the world that cannot be learned. So go with that predisposition that yes, there are skills. Yes, I don't know things, but with a growth mindset, I can learn those things. Become a change manager, as I mentioned. Develop those critical thinking skill set. Be emotionally intelligent, and that's also very important. In the world which is being run by algorithms, where a lot of people are getting impacted by technology, we need to make sure that we do not lose touch of human emotions. That is going to become one of the most important skills. So be emotionally intelligent and be flexible and agile in making sure that you are able to move and move out of your comfort zone, take on new challenges. This as we have been talking about, and pretty much it's a cliche now that world is changing and AI is evolving and it's revolutionizing the way that we are doing business and everything. The only way we can stay relevant, or the only way we can stay on top of it, is number one, making sure that we stop playing that victim kind of a mindset that is AI is coming up and it is going to take away our jobs. We are not the victims here. We are the biggest beneficiaries here as well. AI is going to help us, or technology is already helping us transform the way we are working. I mean, take away so much manual task, and it has potential to do so much more. So get out of that victim mindset and get into that ownership mindset that yes, let's embrace technology, and let's then move on and see how we can use it to solve some of the most complex human and business problems.
If I had a editor, Mark, and I could go back into your book with the top skills, I think I would push that, help people get out of that victim mentality into ownership when it comes under, whether it's change management, but the finance person, if they're going to help spearhead some of this transformation, they're going to have to help lead that, right? Because that's so important what you said, because there isn't so much around the victim mentality of AI is taking over, I'm just going to sit back, but beating that drum that's not the case, that this is, it's one of the greatest things that's ever going to happen. We need to put our trust in it, be smart with it, do it ethically, all the things you said. But if we go into this next decade as a victim mentality, as an organization, you're going to fall way behind, and people will lose jobs, right? Because they're not evolving with it. Such a great way to end this conversation. Listeners, what I want to do is I want to challenge you. A lot of you are founders and C-level executives. I want you to take a look at some of your finance leaders and think about, get out of that old mindset of making sure they're thinking that they're just there for the numbers and all the stuff they could do. But how can we help evolve their skills and have a bigger impact in the organization? And whether it's helping with this AI readiness plan that you're doing or some type of transformation, tap into them. Because like Tariq said, look, any of us could learn anything if we have a growth mindset and we make it work. So, Tariq, this has been awesome. We got your book coming out. Talk a little bit about where our listeners can connect with you at.
Oh yeah, so you can always connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm very active there. So, and I always respond back to my DMs, and so please feel free to reach out there. You can reach out to me from my website as well, which is tariqmunir.me. If you want to get my book, you just need to go on Amazon. It's available pretty much like globally everywhere. So if you just search up Reimagine Finance by Tariq Munir, you would find quite a few places where you can get it. Amazon, of course, is the easiest way and most accessible way to get it.
And it's out this week. It's out this week. So this week we got it going out. So Tariq has a great following on LinkedIn. He's downplaying it. He's got a great following. So connect with him there. This has been our second interview. I'm also honored that I was able to endorse your book. So thank you so much for that. I can't wait for a third time together. And until next time, everybody, do me a favor, stay curious, keep learning, and have a great day. Thank you, Tariq.
I do think within organizations, seek what it is you're trying to solve for or improve, and ensure that it's human-centered. Build with